Which way will I take? Which road will bring me back to home? A thousand pathways, so far from where I...
Hey, what's up everybody? Joshua Casper back at you with Plugin Boutique, and today we're taking a quick look at Echo Cat from Wavesfactory. This is a tape delay emulation from a really popular hardware device conceived by Charlie Watkins back in 1958 called the WEM Copycat. This is it on the screen, and what I'm going to do is run through all of the parameters it has to offer on some vocals.
Which way will I take?
So right off the bat, we've got what the actual Copycat looked like, which is very, very nice touch here. And then we've got the Echo Cat over here. Very cool logo. And then down here at the bottom are the main parameters that you have at your disposal to get in and get started. This is the bypass button, the on-off or the on indicator button, which is pretty clever and pretty cool. Then we have input and output gain. Sustain amount, this is the feedback, the global feedback, if you will. And then we have our mix knob. Down here we have the way to engage or disengage any one of the three tape heads.
Which way will I take? Which road will bring me back to home? A thousand pathways, so far from where I wanna be. So far from, so far from, so far from where I wanna be.
So this is going to stay down here no matter what. We have 4 different pages to get through, so let's just go ahead and jump in and get started. The heads page is where we have our individual controls for each one of the 3 delay lines. We have the time parameter, which can be synced or unsynced. So you can see here we're synced to whatever the BPM is on our project, or we can unsync it and go milliseconds.
Which way will I take? Which road will bring me back to home? A thousand pathways, so far from where I wanna be. So far from, so far from.
So it does give that sort of slurring effect when you're moving the time. So if you automated the time parameter over time, that's weird to say, but if you automate the time parameter over time in your project, you can get some really cool slurring effects. And on top of just how great they sound when you're not slurring them by moving the time effect. So anyway, you have control over the 3 of them. A pretty basic place to start would be to have sort of your tape head 1 in the centered position and then pan the head 2 and head 3 off to the left and the right, and maybe use some of the high pass or low pass filtering. And you can really start to get like maybe ping-ponging effects going on, and definitely a bigger stereo field. And then you have volume control obviously as well. So it's a really good place to start to sculpt the big picture of what your delay line is going to sound like. And then on the tape page, this is where you control the quality of the actual tape being used. So obviously this is virtual. When you use a tape delay machine, you're going to be using the same tape over and over again, which is going to cause some issues. But it's not really an issue. It's more, I guess, create character would be a better way to put it. So Wavesfactory have included a number of different things that you can actually control that character a lot more than you could in an actual hardware unit, unless you had a bunch of different tape to use at any given time. So we've got hiss. All right, pretty pleasant hiss sounding. You can make it mono or stereo, and the auto mute is very key. What this does is if there's no signal being processed through the VST, it will go ahead and shut off. So you have control over the volume of that, and then you have your standard wow and flutter that come in a number of different tape delay emulations. Wow is a slow slurring. It's like a sinusoidal waveform that controls the pitch, or that fluctuates the pitch, and wow is very slow fluctuation, and flutter is a quicker fluctuation. So if I turn up my mix to 100% and leave the sustain around 50%,
Which way will I take? Which road will bring me back to home? A thousand pathways, so far from where I wanna be.
and actually I'm going to jump in here to the motor. This is where we control the motor of the virtual tape deck. I'm going to take the modulation and pull it all the way down because that's actually overtaking the wow and the flutter that I'm trying to showcase here. Amount, I'm going to leave it at 0, and smoothing, we'll just go ahead and turn that down.
Which way will I?
I'm also going to come in and turn down the hum as well, just so we can get a really clear picture of wow and flutter for a second.
Which way will I take? Which road will bring me back to home? 1,000 pathways, so far from where I wanna be, so far from, so far from, so far from where I wanna be. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? Now I hear come home.
So I would say the tape is where you start to add character to the big picture that you created in the heads there. And, you know, with the wow and the flutter, it's just a good way to get the analog feel. And there's also age and signal loss, and these have to do with the output of the tone. So as the tape is aged or used more and more, you actually lose some of the higher frequencies and you get some signal loss as well, which again will roll off some of the higher frequency content, but actually introduce some low frequency content as well.
Which way will I take? Which road will bring me back to home? 1,000 pathways, so far from where I wanna be, so far from.
So you can really hear there what's happening. And that's why I chose to do this demo with a vocal, because it's got a pretty full frequency range and you can really hear what age and signal loss and wow and fluttering are doing to the signal when you use it on a use case like this. And this is just something in general when you throw a delay or really any effect on something, is just to go in and tweak all of the parameters to 100%, just so you can really understand what it's doing to the sound. And then you can go in later when you're actually using it in a project and dial things in. And it's a lot easier if you know what's going on. There's also this cool loop gap feature, which whenever you have a tape delay, you have to actually glue the tape together to make the, you know, the delay or the loop. And that place where you put the glue, it actually creates signal loss because there's no tape there, it's covered with glue. And that's how you stuck it together. And this just gives you control over that. So you can actually introduce more or less of that gap inside of your delay. So you just further making it true to the original copycat device. Motor we briefly touched on, but this is where you can get things really, really crazy if you want to. So if the motor of your tape head or your tape machine is broken or it's old, it's actually going to fluctuate with how fast it's pushing the tape through the heads, which is going to in turn mess with the pitch. And you can get some really crazy results, especially once you start to add some modulation with the modulation controls.
Which way will I take? Which road will bring me back to home? 1,000 pathways.
So you can hear there when I'm moving this up and down, we're getting some pitch slurring. What I can do is actually automate that with the modulation over here. We have sine or triangle waveforms to choose from, how quickly it's happening, and how much of an effect it's going to have. So if I crank this up really high and this pretty quick, we're actually going to really be able to hear it happening.
Which way will I take? Which road will bring me back to home? 1,000 pathways, so far from where I wanna be, so far from, so far from, so far from where I wanna be. Now I hear come home.
So obviously there, I mean, we're going quite extreme, and there's very few cases I can think of where we'd want to be that extreme, but having it there when it's a delay in the background and having it just in a slight sort of shallow amount, it just is going to add, again, character to the delay line and keep it real and true to a really old tape machine. So just a great job by Wavesfactory for including all of these different parameters, and not only including them, but giving you a lot of control over them so you can get the perfect sound for your particular project. Oh, also the hum, I kind of briefly touched on, I turned it off. That's what it sounds like. It sounds really good. And if you automated that, you could have a bass line, but you can also change the frequency. you can actually make a bass line. I was messing around with this tutorial on how to make a bass line with that, and I was also messing around with how to make a kick drum using that hum as well. If that's something that interests you, let me know in the comments and I'll try to pop those videos out for you too. But let's just keep moving. We got the master page. This is where you're going to sculpt the final sound after you've dialed in all of your different delay settings. You've got auto ducking, which is absolutely key. What this does is it will push the delayed signal out of the way of the original when they're coming together. So if I have my mix, around 30%, whenever my original vocal is happening, it's actually going to duck the delayed signal by whatever amount I have here. So if I turn this up really fast.
So far from where I wanna be.
So what it's doing there is really cleaning things up. And this is so key whenever you're using delay. It's something that a lot of new producers do with delay and with reverb, is put too much of it and then it actually ends up clashing with itself. But having a built-in ducking feature is absolutely key. We also have global tuning where we can adjust the boost to the bass and the treble, and we have high pass and low pass filtering. We have we can boost the stereo audio or the mono audio, or reduce it, vice versa. Again, just for more control over the final output of the sound. And then we have a mono signal, a stereo signal, and a fake stereo signal. It's just going to change with how the stereo spread happens in the stereo field.
Which road will bring me back to home? A thousand pathways, so far from where I wanna be, so far from.
So this is a really, really great delay machine, just in terms of delay machines or in terms of delay VST plugins. And it's also really, really great on how accurate it is to the actual analog unit itself and how much control you have over every aspect of that machine, from the actual delay signal to the different tape heads to how the tape is running through the system and the actual motor driving that tape. And then you just have, a ton of control over sculpting the final sound as it leaves the machine. So big up to Wavesfactory. I love the plugins they put out, and this is just another one on the long list of their plugins that is always going to be somewhere inside of my project. So that's EchoCat. It's available now on pluginboutique.com. Definitely click the link in the video description to check it out. And as usual, I'm Joshua Casper here for Plugin Boutique. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.